Welcome to the latest remote edition of RPPV News, bringing you stories from across the Mornington Peninsula. I'm Catie Sharp, and here are top items for this edition. Shocking job losses in the wake of the coronavirus. The state opposition weighs into the AGL dispute. More information on the new beach box regulations. Recognition for Balnarring Preschool during Reconciliation Week. Deborah Ma reports on the fight over the naming of Rosebud's new Aquatic Centre, and we get a glimpse of a spectacular natural phenomenon. Now for the full stories. 1 in 12 jobs has been lost across Frankston and the Mornington Peninsula as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. The figure comes from a report released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics this week. It covers only payroll jobs and does not include small business owners and self-employed. This is unsurprising for a region heavily dependent on the hospitality and tourism industries, but will put serious pressure on local support centres. It is expected that this will ease once lockdown restrictions are lifted. We now go to Shivani Pillay for further details on the impact of the pandemic on the peninsula.
Thanks, Catie. Victoria's state of emergency has been extended until 11:59 p.m. on the 21st of June 2020. As at the 2nd of June 2020, the total number of coronavirus cases in Victoria is 1,664. The number of deaths remains at 19. Mornington Peninsula COVID-19 cases, fortunately, have remained steady at 62 as we head into June. New cases that have emerged are linked to an aged care home, a kindergarten, and an outbreak at Ridges in Swanston Street in the city. One of the most important elements of the restrictions to remember is the state government's edict. If you can work from home, you must continue to do so. This will take pressure off the roads, especially while it is risky using public transport. More than 500,000 test results have been received by the department since the 1st of January 2020. And it has been over a month since the government's COVID Safe app was launched. Since then, it has been downloaded over 6 million times and used in at least one successful training exercise. The result is said to reflect how well Australia is doing. Like Australia's COVID-19 infections, the downward curve has flattened. There is no magic number. However, Health Minister Greg Hunt frames it by saying every download is a win. And the COVID app is said to be an important part of the strategy to manage COVID outbreaks as we move ahead. Life is not back to normal yet. Mornington Senior Sergeant Paul Edward told Mornington Peninsula News the relaxing of COVID-19 restrictions was not time to think everything's back to normal. People still need to be aware of the numbers allowed at gatherings and events and to make sure they keep the 1.5 metre distancing, he said. In a sign that many people think that the danger has passed, parents have begun registering their children's upcoming parties with the police station. If we see people blatantly flouting the rules, they will receive the $1,652 fine, he said. Senior Sergeant Edwards said police were happy with the Peninsula residents and how they had conducted themselves during the pandemic, and sensible behaviour meant that less than 5 fines were issued to those flouting the rules. On-the-spot fines applied to individuals and businesses, with businesses liable for on-the-spot fines of $9,913 and up to $100,000 in court. Phillip Island business owners and employees already struggling with the economic impacts of COVID-19 have been dealt with another blow, with the cancellation of the MotoGP in October. The cancellation of this year's race was confirmed on Friday, and it is now scheduled to return in 2021. Anne-Marie Sims of the Phillip Island Bakery in Cowes told Fairfax News that the MotoGP's cancellation, on top of many businesses closing their doors since mid-March, was a massive loss. And she now wonders how many people will actually reopen once COVID-19 restrictions ease. COVID cleansing teams are out in force. 10 5-person teams are out disinfecting communal touchpoints throughout the Mornington Peninsula to lessen the spread of COVID-19. The teams are being paid for through the state citywide project as part of a $500 million Working for Victoria program, which matches people who have lost their jobs, including those affected by the economic impacts of COVID-19, with employers who need staff. The extra cleansing and disinfecting service is additional to the Shire's own clean team. Teams are cleaning public seating, playground equipment, bins, pedestrian signal buttons, handrails, street furniture, and bus shelters. And in some good news for our region, 13 captive orange-bellied parrots have been released by Moonlit Sanctuary Wildlife Conservation Park staff in Western Port. This is the first time the critically endangered parrots have been released in the area and follows a 2-month training regime in a large aviary. The Pearsdale Sanctuary's director, Michael Johnston, said the release was made possible thanks to 2 environmentally dedicated landowners who allowed the aviary to be built on their property next to the parrot salt marsh habitat. The release was part of the sanctuary's commitment to the recovery of orange-bellied parrots in the wild, including breeding more than 180 birds since 2013. And that's the COVID-19 update. I'm Shivani Pillay. Back to you, Catie.
Thank you, Shivani. Some good news at last for the Peninsular Aquatic Recreation Centre in Frankston. It has been given a $680,000 cash injection from Frankston Council to help with the financial impact of the pandemic. It will receive a further $2 million over the next financial year, but it is not clear at this point whether any of the funds will go to the 259 employees who were stood down in March and are ineligible for the JobKeeper allowance. The state opposition has weighed into the clash between gas giant AGL and Western Port locals. AGL plans to build a gas import terminal at Crib Point, which is being strongly opposed by environmental groups and community members. AGL's environmental effects statement is due to be released for public comment soon, and the community, which is still in lockdown, will have only 4 weeks to comment on the plan. Hastings MP Neil Burgess has called on Richard Wynne, the Minister for Planning, to use his discretion to delay or extend the consultation period. In other news, the Mornington Peninsula Shire is to receive more than $4.8 million as part of the federal government's $1.8 billion boost for local road and community projects. Mornington Peninsula Shire Mayor Sam Hearn said the council welcomed this timely injection of funds, which will go towards projects including new bridges and tunnels, street lighting and community facilities. Border Watch is stepping up its surveillance of Port Phillip Bay and Western Port. It has asked locals to keep an eye on any unusual activity, such as boats anchored in odd areas, strange radio activity, boats going out in bad weather, or displaying unusual modification. Border forces warn that criminals may attempt to use small craft to bring drugs, illegal tobacco, weapons, and dangerous chemicals into Australia. The Border Watch number for reporting anything suspicious is 1800 06 1800. Coming up after the break, Deborah Marr bravely wades into the debate over the naming of Rosebud's new aquatic centre.
The reopening of our economy is underway, suggesting the low point in this economic contraction is behind us. But the path ahead remains full of uncertainty. A quick update on our observations on where we are and the road to recovery. The COVID-19 news continues to improve locally, allowing a more rapid and hopefully less interrupted pickup in business activity, despite the savage impact of the global pandemic on the jobs market. The contrast in how this will play out in Australia and in many parts of Southeast Asia versus the bleak outlook in North America and Europe is yet to be seen, but the relative mortality rates are stark in contrast. Some of these relativities are being seen in the Aussie dollar, which has been rebounding strongly as our economy reopens and probably reflects optimism for our region and our trading partners. But at the same time, pessimism around the challenges seen in the United States. It's a V shape which matches the stronger iron ore price and arguably shows the decisiveness and effectiveness of government policy to contain the virus. On this theme, we heard from our RBA head Philip Lowe last week, and again yesterday, that the fall in the infection rates means that their upside scenario, with a more shallow recession and a faster recovery, is more plausible. Unfortunately, even this scenario is still a painful one that will have long-lasting impact on the economy. But looking at the range of possible outcomes, the RBA said that we are tracking closer to the upside than the downside in the chart. In the months ahead, this can be monitored by tracking the unemployment rate and total hours worked, and by seeing how GDP trends. Later today, we get the first quarter GDP numbers, which are expected to show a contraction of about -0.25%. If it happens to come in flat, we could even avoid a technical recession. But there'll be no escaping a huge contraction of our economy in the June quarter, as much as 10%. That number won't be known for another 3 months. However, if the economy and the jobs market aren't improving by September, the government will have the opportunity to direct some of the spare $60 billion from the JobKeeper program to sectors in need. Stock markets are continuing their recovery despite the uncertain impact of COVID-19 and global political tensions, with our ASX 200 tracking the rest of the world. But unlike the Aussie dollar, it's not yet a definitive V shape. Volatility levels here and abroad have been normalising after the roller coaster in March, suggesting some confidence that fiscal and monetary policy can do the trick as the economy gets back into its stride. And lastly, the RBA kept rates on hold yesterday and implied they won't be moving any higher for years to come. So, despite the stress on jobs, it was interesting to see that property prices only fell marginally in May. And, looking at some of the CoreLogic data, regional property fared much better than capital cities, a trend that may be just starting to emerge. And that's the market update from Bendigo Bank.
Welcome back. Progress continues on the new Aquatic Centre currently under construction on Bonio Road, Mornington. Some time ago, locals were given the opportunity to have their say in the naming of the centre. Now, some Mornington Peninsula Shire councillors have delayed making the final decision about the name, a move which could cost ratepayers a further $200,000. RPPV News reporter Deborah Marr caught up with the Red Hill Ward councillor David Gill to expose the circumstances behind this costly decision.
Councillor David Gill, thank you for your time today. A costly exercise to name an aquatic centre that could have been avoided. At the last council meeting, 6 councillors voted to delay the decision to name the aquatic centre. How did this unfold at the meeting?
Good morning, Deb. It's interesting. We had workshops with councillors. We had a long leading time. We had consultants and a panel with the mayor on the panel, and we thought it was all resolved. All the names were there. Pick one and vote for it. I just spoke to someone the other day with the naming of Pelican Park in Hastings. Really interesting. The CEO chose the names, presented it to the one name to the councillors when we would have been in the 70s probably, and they accepted it, and that was it. No cost at all. We went through, things have changed. We went through a consultation process with the public, which you would do, and came up with a list of 13 names that went to councillors to refine that down to a short list, and then the short list came to the council meeting, and it went, 6 councillors voted for it to be sent back for another lot of consultation. Even the consultants cost a lot of money, and I can assure you that it's been quoted at $30,000, and it's probably correct for this next lot of consultation just for the consultants. Yeah, so it came about in a strange way. it just seemed apparent that if you don't get the name you want, you don't want to make a decision. Those councillors had the opportunity to just put any name up that they wished to at that meeting, the decision meeting of the council, but they chose to go back to consultation.
Well, there were 5 names on the list.
Yapa means to swim, Aboriginal language word.
Yes.
Barbara means stingray, which I really like that one because it's in the shape of the building a little too. So, and Gunawarra, meaning black swan. So they were the latest of the short list, and it may have surprised some that they're all Aboriginal language words, but a strong theme came in with the public consultation to have a cultural heritage name as an iconic name for a pool, for the aquatic centre that is for all of the peninsula. And when you say the names that came up, the other 2 that were suggested on the night, Rosebud, which has about 15 other leisure and recreation centres in Rosebud called Rosebud, and Tides, fairly common name for a swimming pool. So I was a little surprised that we didn't choose one of the names that was on the short list. They've gone through a long process.
Because you wanted one of the Aboriginal names, you didn't want the Rosebud Aquatic Centre.
Well, the public consultation pointed to and there were 420 submissions, and that pointed to a cultural heritage name with some history attached or some real meaning attached. And the Aboriginal names came to the surface. And I suppose one of the factors in that is that there's not that many places on the peninsula. And we can all name some, but mostly English names. And this was an opportunity to recognise in the week that we're making this decision, Deb, it was Reconciliation Week, yes. Aboriginal Reconciliation Week, and it was also on the Sorry Day, which was for the stolen generations, and it was a perfect fit in a lot of ways.
I mean, what an opportunity that would have been in years to come to commemorate the Aquatic Centre as it was named, one of those Aboriginal names on one of those days. I mean, you could have that forever and a day, and it would mean a lot to people down here. Now, you've got the ratepayers very angry, and even John Cain, the president of the Ratepayers Association, has weighed in on this. The local state MP, Chris Brain, he's weighed in on it and said that just get on with it. He wants to put his swimmers on. And we don't want the ratepayers, of course, paying $200,000 extra to go through another process of naming this aquatic centre. Why can't we just decide on one of the Aboriginal names and be done with it?
Yes, Deb, I appreciate the support that's come in. It's overwhelming support. And John Cain, as you said, the president of the local Residents and Ratepayers Association for the Mornington Peninsula, our local state MP of that area, Chris Brain. These, along with many others, they have two parts to this. They don't want to see money wasted, not in a time when we're combating coronavirus and trying to find ways to help people, which is easy to do. We can find the ways, I suppose. It's making sure we do it properly, and it's costly. Now, it was up to $200,000. I believe it's around that figure. There'll be arguments about that because how do you calculate the costs of delay as well as the cost of payments that we can make for more consultancy and more aspects of just getting branding and marketing done. And branding comes right down to uniforms with a name on. They all cost money.
Yes, that's right. Now, of course, what the locals are going to read into this, we have an election coming up at the end of this year, a local council election. Are we going to be reading into that there's going to be votes in this, knowing that some of the councillors who voted a delay are in Seawind's ward?
It's an interesting one. The people of Rosebud might initially feel that why not call it Rosebud because it's in Rosebud. When the pool came about at the start of the term of the present councillors, which is getting on to 4 years ago, because the next election's coming up, and it's a 4-year term. When we came in, we said, we want to get on with a pool. And it had been around for 15, 20 years. People were arguing what the site would be and all the other aspects.
Rosebud lobby group got involved in that and are still involved in it.
Well, the same lobby group that are involved with wanting to name Rosebud were the people that delayed the instigation of a pool by choosing a site that was unacceptable to state government on the beach. Now, it may seem logical to some, but it's not dependent on the beach, and both parties, major parties, don't believe in having buildings put on beach, taking up public space on the beach when they don't have to be there, when they're not dependent on being there. And a swimming pool, of course, isn't dependent on being there. It's an alternative to the beach. It's an interesting fact that we have 17,000 private swimming pools on the peninsula. I think it's the second most of any municipality in Australia. And we're surrounded by water.
That's right. But there's nothing down that end of the peninsula. That's the problem with the pool.
Yeah. But a pool is a public service, community service. It's not something you can say isn't needed on the peninsula. And learning to swim is much better and much easier. And I've taught swimming in my younger days, and I've done it at the beach and I've done it in a pool. And it's very difficult to teach young kids to swim with waves around and so on. So we did need it, and we certainly needed the other aspects, the health aspects, the warm water pool and so on, really drastically needed for our community. So we all voted in favour of the pool, and we wanted to get on with it, and we chose the site. So after all those years, this present council got on with that part. It's just a shame that we couldn't get on with the last part and get this building finished and open to the public on time.
Right. And completed. Now, lastly, David, when do you think that we will hear a decision? When is this decision going to be made finally?
It's at least an 8-week, Deb, it's at least an 8-week consultation time frame, maybe longer. And of course, then you've got to come back and go through it again with the council. So it's going to be really difficult to get things done. We're planning to open in December. I don't know, it may still happen, but I mean, this is a big, branding and marketing are essential to get an income going for this. All municipal pools run at a loss. They're looked at as a community service, but we don't want the loss to be a burden on ratepayers. So we try to minimise that loss as much as possible. This is just making it more difficult. So the ongoing costs might be one of the factors that are building the 200,000 too.
All right, David. Well, thank you so much for your time again today. We'll leave it there. I'm Deborah Marr speaking with the councillor.
Which one is my favourite?
Sorry?
Yeah. One of the Aboriginal words I just wanted to mention was barbawa, or barbawa. Yeah. And that means stingray. And it's a little like the shape of the new building. And I just like that. It wasn't the recommended one in the end, even before the postponement, but it was one of the on the short list. But Yawa, Gunawara, and the other two that were put in at the last moment, Rosebud and Tides. So when it goes out there again, I hope that every community on the peninsula, because it's their pool, it's everyone's pool, has a say, not just the local people.
Well, we'll be waiting for that, and hopefully there will be a celebration that there's an agreement with everybody on the final name for this aquatic centre down in Rosebud. Thanks again, Dave.
And let's just try to make it an iconic name. That's right. What we need.
That's right. Thank you again. Back to you, Catie.
That was Deborah Marr with Councillor David Gill. Next week, Deborah will speak with Betty Preston, spokesperson for the Rosebud Lobby Group, to share her views. The proposed new regulation for the Peninsula's beach boxes calls for local and limited ownership. More than half of current beach box licences are sent to addresses outside the municipality, suggesting that they are owned by people who do not live locally. The new regulations propose that the beach boxes should gradually be brought back to local ownership and that owners be limited to one licence to ensure those who own the boxes are using them and not just keeping them as an investment. Community consultation on the new regulation closes on the 19th of June. Balnarring Preschool is one of several projects up for this year's awards with Reconciliation Victoria. The school has been recognised for its partnership with local elders to deepen the next generation's understanding of First Nation communities' history, language and culture, which includes introducing the students to Boonwurrung language and words. The citation acknowledges the school's impact in helping to bring Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal hearts and minds together. The CFA has also been commended during Reconciliation Week 2020. It has maintained a strong focus on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander inclusion with the Koori Inclusion Action Plan, as well as the Victorian Cultural Fire Strategy and Joint Fuel Management Program. Chief Officer Steve Warrington added, "There are some very important lessons for us, particularly in relation to fire and traditional burning, that can be learnt from Aboriginal culture and history." The CFA had a further boost this week when it rolled out some $20.5 million in donations after the summer's bushfire appeals. The money will go towards mobile community education vans, ultralight tankers, station equipment and a transformative volunteer leadership program. And finally, our CFA friends have reminded us it's time to check your chimneys. With the coming of winter comes the prospect of cosy nights in front of the fireplace, but check your chimneys to ensure there's no buildup of creosote blocking the passage of smoke. Gas heaters should also be serviced and inspected every 2 years. And it's time for the March of the Spider Crabs. Every year, thousands of giant spider crabs migrate to the shallows of Port Phillip Bay, reaching their biggest mass by June. In an extraordinary natural spectacle, these creatures rise from the depths of Bass Strait into the waters around Rye Pier and Blairgowrie Pier. They make the pilgrimage so they can molt their shells in safety. Their new shells take several days to harden, so they need to be far away from predators. The crabs often dangle from the pier pylons to avoid the hungry stingrays below. And now it's time for Weather with Lisa.
Lisa Lenoble bringing you our remote Mornington Peninsula 6-day forecast this chilly Thursday, the 4th of June. Let's take a look at the weather for this week and for our first week of winter. Today we'll have a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 13. Partly cloudy, light winds. Friday, a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 13. Partly cloudy, slight chance of a shower. Light winds becoming northwesterly, 15 to 20 k's during the morning, then becoming light during the day. On Saturday, we'll have a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 13. Cloudy, medium chance of a shower, most likely in the evening. Light winds becoming west to northwesterly, 15 to 20 k's during the day. On Sunday, we will have a minimum of 7 and a maximum of 13. Cloudy, medium chance of showers. Winds will be westerly, 15 to 20 k's, turning south to southwesterly during the morning. On Monday, enjoy a day off. A minimum of 6, a maximum of 13. Cloudy, medium chance of a shower. Light winds. On Tuesday, we will have a chilly minimum of 5, maximum of 14. Partly cloudy, slight chance of a shower. Light winds becoming northwesterly, 15 to 20 k's during the morning. Hopefully you'll enjoy a beautiful long weekend with the restrictions easing. I'm sure getting out and about is on the cards. Please remember to stay safe. I'm Lisa Lenoble. Thanks so much for watching on RPPV. I'll see you next week.
Now on to our host on the coast with the most, it's Muzz with the Surf Report.
Good afternoon guys and welcome to this week's Mornington Peninsula Surf Report. As you can see behind me, we've still got plenty of swell and it's going to hang in there for a couple of days. A couple of big fronts through in the weekend and some big tides, but there will be waves possibly on the beach breaks on Friday and Saturday and then later next week. But as we're seeing behind us, same as, lots of swell. Go and find a place to surf. There is waves if you know where to look.
And that's all from our team here at RPPV News, serving the community with stories that matter to you. Remember, if you can work from home, you must do so. Stay safe, wash your hands, and shop locally to support our community. Keep watching and tell your friends. Bringing you the news from coast to coast across the Mornington Peninsula, I'm Catie Sharp. See you for the next edition.